The organization which I represent, Texas Impact, is the largest statewide interfaith organization. It has representatives from most of the major faith communities of Texas, including Jewish, Muslim, and Christian. As such, our concern is that whatever budget the legislature seeks to adopt, the balance sought cannot be achieved at the expense of the most vulnerable citizens of our state. This would include the chronically and temporarily unemployed, the infirm, the elderly, and the children. Likewise, no budget should be adopted which merely pushes the care of these vulnerable citizens onto already overburdened city and county leadership governments and nonprofit organizations through a kind of smoke and mirrors manipulation of numbers in the state budget that leaves a larger problem without larger resources. As faith leaders, we want to remind the legislature, its leadership, and the governor that a budget is a moral document, and as such reveals our value of the common good of all our citizens, not just those who are able to afford full-time paid lobbyists or to contribute to political campaigns, thus gaining imbalanced access to the levers of power in our state. As religious leaders in large and small communities, we've watched with growing concern the increase in suffering in every part of our state. Food banks in some of our rural counties can measure the increase in the needs of their communities in tons of food distributed. The increase is fourfold in some cases. Likewise, demand for rent support and utility support for the elderly and single-parent families is significantly up. Any decrease in the state's share of the cost of aiding the most vulnerable among us will have to be borne by the nonprofit sector and faith communities. Generous as these are, they cannot fulfill the need alone. Furthermore, we know what happens when the only remedy for a deficit is budgetary cuts to so-called discretionary spending. This past weekend in the Houston Chronicle, we learned that the largest facility in our state serving those with mental illness is the Harris County Jail, which serves more mentally ill persons than all 10 of our remaining state facilities for the mentally impaired. This is a direct result of the decision by a previous legislature to slash spending on mental health resources. The reckless discussion of pulling Texas out of Medicaid does not envision the devastating closure of many rural hospitals and nursing facilities that would result from such a simplistic and foolish action. Thousands of Texans would have no place to go in their communities when they became ill or unable to maintain independent living. Our adult and child protective services are already so overburdened with caseloads that hundreds of children and adults are going without any advocates for their safety and health. As we have not even begun to explore the incredible cost to county and nonprofit hospitals, which serve the nation's largest pool of persons without health insurance, a majority of whom are children. These health costs and the loss of time, productivity, and educational attainment are weakening our state workforce. And we are distressed by the poor level of funding for public education, the one item the Texas Constitution requires the state to fund. Do the people of Texas want to abandon their fellow citizens who are poor, sick, unemployed, hungry, mentally challenged, physically challenged, neglected, abused, and educationally deprived? I don't think so. And neither do the faith communities for whom I speak. Any budget solution which the legislature seeks to adopt must, if it is to be one that is moral and just, include not only appropriate reordering of the funding for educational, health, human services, and restorative justice through well-examined and transparent reductions, but must also seek to enhance the resources available for such funding by maximizing the amount of federal dollars that flow to our state for such services, by looking at revenue enhancement that is equitable and does not fall entirely on the least able to pay, and unnecessary or unproductive tax breaks or loopholes. Within our communities, we have found shared understandings of the Holy One who stands at the center of creation. To know God is to know God as just and merciful. God's justice requires a deep and abiding commitment to the marginalized, the forgotten, and the voiceless, so that they may experience the fullness of life God has intended for us all. And God's mercy, God's grace knows no outliers, no class of persons who can be ignored as unworthy or unneeded. All life is sacred, and a budget that does not seek to support and enhance the common life of creation might have a balance in its numbers, but it will be woefully unbalanced in the eyes of God. Let those who have ears hear.